I would respect someone who is like against abortion is if they say, I'm against it, but I still think you have the right to make the choice for yourself. Like, I wouldn't choose it for me, but like, I respect your ability to choose. That's where,
because that's a choice.
Yes,
you're
exactly.
choosing to not. If you were to be in a situation where you needed to, you're choosing to not. That is what a right to choose is.
Exactly. But I think when people take it one step further and they think, well, I'm against it, so everyone should be.
That's
where it's like, it's a problem.
We do ultimately need to get more comfortable with the idea of like, we're going to disagree, you guys. Mm-hmm. We're going to disagree. We're not going to like, and we have to be able to talk about. What scares me is if we don't talk about politics more, it's going to never change.
We go back, like way back, 21 years back. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Kelly. And we have been friends long enough to know that that kind of connection is rare.
We've recognized a pattern that we can come together feeling overwhelmed and jaded by life, but can walk away from our conversations feeling elevated and fulfilled. Our goal is to have our listeners share in that experience with each episode.
This podcast is our love letter to each other. It has been years in the making, and finally the stars have aligned, and we like to open up our conversations to you. We intend to build a community where no topic is off the table.
In a world where discomfort is actively avoided, therapy is not accessible to many, yet you should talk to a therapist, is a reflex response that denies connection. We have found that talking it out has been a form of free therapy in itself.
We dive into topics like death, divorce, disordered eating, debt, and every taboo topic in between, all while balancing the scales with our tongue-in-cheek humor.
With that, who's ready to get taboo?
Full disclaimer, I have no fucking idea. Let's just get one thing straight. That's going to be the theme of this episode, is that I'm talking about something I know nothing about. But I feel like the side of American politics that is like focusing on like your individual life and the things that'll better like the economy and money and taxes and all that shit that, again, I don't know a lot about. Mm-hmm. Listen to our money episode and you'll know it. I don't know a lot about money. Those politicians, it's like they align with like, yeah, sure, I want the people to have like, financial stability or like independence, all of those things. But also those policies mean keeping the minorities on the bottom. But that's the thing. I don't think it has to. But I think what you're speaking to is correct. But like, that is a fact now. So right, it's like, now, correct. I'm not okay with voting with, so I'm like, well, fuck it. I feel like I have a very privileged life. So I think my perspective is like, yeah, things aren't what I want them to be. Fuck this. I have no independence. I go to the grocery store once every 2 months. Fuck the world. It's just as expensive to eat out. I'm so angry. Yeah. But I'm also like, where my priority, like I can't align with like voting for someone that is going to make my life better, like more stable. I mean, but that like I'm participating in because of the way the politics are right now. Like we need enough upheaval and we need a change in keeping people at the bottom. Oh yeah. Like it's a part of the system to keep poor people poor, all of the things. Yes. Like that's well, and we're eliminating the middle class too by doing that. Right. And so it's like, I just can't, my like what few political views I have is like, I just can't vote for anyone that sees a group of people as lesser than to where they can politicize their way of living. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yes. Oh, so totally. That's where I'm fucking torn is I'm like, well, I don't want to like maybe their policies would make it so that I can afford groceries more, but like, fuck it. What's the cost? Yes. No, 100%. Yeah. And I totally hear what you're saying. I'm so mad about it.
That's where it feels unfair. No, but it feels unfair that I'm like made to like pick between two shitty options. And then what's hard is that I just said that out loud, and the whole time I'm like, fuck, I don't want you to think that what I'm saying is that you don't care about minorities. I'm not saying that at all. No, exactly. I'm not. No, and it has nothing to do with you. I don't think that's what you're saying, but that's like the hard part about like where things are right now is like, it's scary to say that like your priority is here, your priority's there. It's like, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't care about these other things, but it's sure, like, I do. But this is, I think, one of the first like maybe elections that I've like actually considered things that are really important to me, rather than like
what everyone around you is saying.
Yeah. And that's like kind of to go back to like what we were talking about earlier is to like, to be in, well, I thought it was really interesting because I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about all these like political kind of like hotspots in the country.
Yeah.
And they're talking about like, you know, New York, LA, and Portland was one of those things. And they mentioned like maybe like 3 or 4 major cities. And I just thought it was so interesting that Portland was like a given in that list.
Oh my God, really?
And I think because we're here, we don't like maybe recognize it as much because it's just like when you're sitting in it, like you don't like see, you can't see the thing for what it is, or like maybe recognize that it's very different.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting to note. So when you are in a place that is so politically active, and so like has such a personality in that way.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, let's get one thing. I think that there's a huge misconception about Oregon, and it's that people think that Oregon, the representation of Oregon is the city of Portland, and that is not
true at all.
Accurate. Portland is Portland, and it is blue, and it will blue.
Yes.
It is blue.
Everywhere else in Oregon, red.
It's very, very red. We live in a very conservative state where, because Oregon is a smaller, less populated state. Like, yes, we had a boom where everyone was moving here for a minute. We don't really have cities. We have Portland, and that's our only metropolitan. Bend is kind of
becoming
which is also blue.
Blue, yeah.
And so it's like our 2 cities are blue, but the rest of the state is red. And I think that is a huge misconception about Oregon.
Yeah, I would say like a lot of people that I know, and even myself to some extent, like are kind of in that like gray area of like the libertarian where they can kind of like swing one way or another. I don't feel like comfortable like super identifying with one thing or the other. I would say maybe more independent, maybe libertarian qualities. But at the end of the day, it's like I don't want to commit to one thing or another because I don't necessarily think like I don't know. It's like
I'm comfortable saying what I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable saying what I am.
Okay.
There are hard things. Like, I think if you know me, you know that there's things that I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Fuck no.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that with the party that, and it's not like I'm being super slick. I think people can listen to this episode and probably figure out like which way I lean. And I'm fine with that, but I'm not going to sit here and like say it myself because I won't give people that kind of access. But I do. I just feel like it's really important. Like I do lean a certain way and have a certain party that I for the most part do align with completely.
Yeah.
There's only a few things, but like I think for me is like I don't want to say that I am a part of a certain party only because it's so important for me to be able to see the flaws in the party in which I vote.
That's exactly how I feel. That's why I'm not comfortable saying like I belong to one party or another, that I do like feel more independent because I want to look at the candidate or what's on the table in that given election and then be able to make a decision and not just have like party like
I don't want a party stamped on my forehead, but I do think where we're different is like
I'm not pledging allegiance to one side or the other because I don't feel like what I believe in or what is important to me is even being honored or like really up for discussion. It's like all these things like to me I feel like we've gotten so our political system has gotten so like bought. It doesn't feel like any politician is actually campaigning for the policies or the people.
I think where you and I differ though is that like there aren't any values of mine that align with the other side. Period. But what I don't want, right? So like I am one side or the other, I guess, but I don't want to call myself that or identify as that because I see so many flaws in the party that I'm aligned with that I don't agree with. And that I think is what's so important. And I think that's something that has really gotten away from people is like, just because you support one party does not mean that every move they make is perfect, is correct, is ethical, is right. Like, and I don't know why people are so uncomfortable with being like, I tend to vote this way, but like, fuck, dude, what are they doing? What like, you know, and every time I try to have that conversation, I feel like people get like, oh my God, like
I feel like it's illegal to question.
Yeah. And that's my issue.
That's the issue. I should be like, if you're talking to other people in your own party, you know, like, you should be able to be like, dude, what the fuck?
Yes.
About anything. Like, and
when
it feels like, oh, you can talk about anything, but not that.
Yeah.
Like that.
And if you question him, then you're not a real this, then that means you're the other thing.
Yeah.
So by me questioning the party that I vote with, that means I'm not actually one based on your opinion. And then suddenly I'm on the other side.
That is a really dangerous thing to not allow.
Yes.
Because like if you aren't allowed to question and we're all just like blindly following, that is dangerous territory. Because soon enough we're walking off a cliff and we didn't know because we were just following.
Yeah, but that's even hard because then it's like there's one of our political groups that's like a part of their whole campaign is like don't be a sheep. So I try to not say that because I'm like I'm not trying to like
shit like nothing you can say like
say
there's
anything.
no analogy because it's like I
wasn't calling you out. I'm just saying it's a thing.
And that's hard because it's like I feel like I mean it's I don't know. It's just it's so muddy.
It's like a terrible topic.
It's really hard. But I think what you just said is like it's like to not feel like you can like openly talk about it.
Never.
Like that is so dangerous. It doesn't matter what party you're on, what like or
you have
part
no
of,
idea.
Like, it's so what?
Like I was just gonna say, like I don't know if this is going on in your head right now, but we're talking about this. I'm sweating bullets, but also I'm thinking in my head, oh my God, my mom's going to think that I was speaking too conservatively. Oh my God, my best friends are going to think that I sound like I'm saying I'm not a liberal. Like all of these things are going through my head of like panic of like.
And it's like, why is it so, but like,
I'm just trying to be neutral.
No, exactly. And it's like, it's okay to, I don't know. Like, and I feel like just because like I'm trying to like kind of
You're doing great,
be
by the
like
way.
Objective or like see
You're
like a
doing
bigger
it.
picture, people are probably going to be like, oh, well, she is just as red as red gets. And that's like, and that's how I feel about myself. That's whatever. Like, I think at the end of the day though, if you are someone who is like not able to see like the bigger picture that we're like getting at, that's a opportunity to do some like reflection or like think about like what you say you stand for or like what's important.
We're not here to push anything. It's like, I think it's hard to not talk about like our certain viewpoints on certain things as like an example. But like what we're here trying to do is to dissect or acknowledge and bring to light the fact that like this is so hot button and polarizing.
Yeah. And it's like, it's when you feel like you're going to get canceled for like time. Questioning something or being like, hey, actually, the person on the other side said something that I do kind of agree with and I'm not supposed to agree with it. I think that's like not fair either. It's like, okay, if you're in a relationship, it's like wanting to be right. And then at all costs, even if the other person says something where you're like, oh, I kind of see where you're coming from. Or like, it's like holding steadfast to like, nope, I'm not giving you anything. Cause if I give an inch, you're going to take a mile. And it's like, it doesn't have to be like that. We can actually be like, hey, on these things, we agree. Yeah. On these things, no. And I think that's where like the political, like just the two party kind of
jargon of it all.
Bullshit is like it keeps people from like being able to have these conversations, but then also just like acknowledge like where they agree and disagree. Cause I think so much of it's like, well, we'll just agree to disagree. But it's like, well, have you even gotten to anything that you agree on? Cause I bet there might be something, but you're so caught up in like the sides that you have to take.
Like you're so mad you don't even finish the conversation because you hear that someone disagree. And like, again, I have to say for me personally, there are things that are black and white, right? Like there are things like there are certain issues where I'm like,
no. It's a hard no.
It's a hard no for me. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to throw a tantrum and be like, fuck you. It means that I'm going to take note and like recognize that like
I think that shows where you're secure in yourself and like secure in like your beliefs and your values. Cause I think that's kind of a difference too for me personally is like I've become more secure in myself and I can actually articulate things that I believe in or like values that are important to me so that I when it comes to like taking a stance politically, I think I can do that now, where prior I was just kind of going along with my peers, where now like, yes, I have peers. And like, I think because you're close people, you're going to agree on a lot of shit.
Yeah.
But then also there's going to be things that you disagree on. And it's the same thing that happens politically. I think another interesting area or kind of a debate is like having just this like two-party system.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard people say like, oh, well, if you have like more than that, you end up with someone who like won, but they only got 6% of the vote. And I'm like, okay, but that's when you have like 12 parties.
Right.
Like I think a 3-party system, from what I know, which is not a lot, barely anything, 3 parties make sense to me. Like, I don't know if it has to be like, so like what, because I think when you have one, you have like 2, you have red and you have blue, and it's like there's no like bridge in the middle. There's like, it leaves an entire, I think, group of the country out of it because they don't identify with one side or the other. And I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't fucking know, so I'm not going to vote, or I don't know enough, or I'm just going to pick one, or I'm going to do anything except pick this person. It's like, people aren't like, there's nothing that is like appealing to them politically to participate.
Well, and I think that, again, this is why it's going to be interesting just watching American politics are just always so sloppy, but like here's my thing with like, I don't know how a 3-party system would work. I understand.
I don't either.
I have no idea, but like, I honestly barely know how, you know what? We're not going to go down that road. Kelly doesn't know a lot, as I've said, but here's my thing with like okay, voting independent. I think I do know enough to know that like, it is so overwhelming how many people are like, you know, for the 2-party system, or that participate in the 2-party system because that's like how it's presented to us. That like, the logic is there that if you are someone that is passionate about like there being an independent party or libertarian party who actually fucking matters in an election, then you should be grinding every single day of every single year to make that party have growth. What pisses me off is when people are just like, well, I don't like either red or blue, so I'm just going to vote independent. And it's like, but you did nothing to campaign. You did nothing to actually give them a voice. The last 3 years, it's the same as not voting, because there is no substantial anything to the independent party because nobody actually does the work. Everybody remains apathetic and it's just like, I'm just, you know, it is what it is. We elect a president, and like for 3 years, that's what it is. And then all of a sudden, an election year, it's like, if you actually want change, me too, all of us, we need to be doing the fucking work and giving a shit 24/7, not just an election year. But then it goes back to like, well, don't talk about it because it's taboo and not appropriate to talk about an independent party. And like, you're ruining the system. And like, by voting independent, that means you're guaranteeing this person is going to take office and yada, yada. And so it's like, where's the win? Because the second you start talking about like, hey, I actually really like what this independent candidate has to say, and I really like what they are running for, and it's actually speaking to me, and it's issues that I care about, and it's the first time I've heard a politician talk about it in this way. It's like, well, that's a waste of a vote. You're throwing away your vote. You're like, you're basically voting for the other person if you vote for this independent person. So it's like, yes, but also it's like they're the 2-party system, or people who buy into that have so much power because there's so much money behind it that even if you are campaigning and like actively trying to have conversations with your peers about an independent candidate, it's like squashed because it's like, oh, well, what a crock you are because you're buying into someone else. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Not in the 2-party system. I acknowledge that there is literally, if you are someone who is like, I don't want to participate in the 2-party system, or like, I am actually genuinely interested in the independent party, you're in an uphill battle that you will never win, because our politics have become so monetized, and it's a part of someone's like moral character now. Politics aren't just like, I feel like it's not something that's just like a sliver of someone's life.
Well, that's like what it's interpreted as in both sides. Like are like think like when someone is really like stands for one side or the other, like they think that the person in the other party has no morals. Because of whatever they're buying into.
Because again, it's like, well, what do you care about more? Your day-to-day life and like what makes you comfortable, or like these other people that like are suffering that it's like out of you. It may not affect you directly.
But like, then at the same time, like, are those people even going to do anything about like the values that they say that they're campaigning on? Either side. Like if you care about like I don't know, it doesn't even matter what the issue is. It's like, okay, yes, like they're saying this, but is there any like action to back it up once they're actually in office.
Well, and
or are they just a puppet for like all this money that's behind the scenes?
Well, I think that's at the end of the day, like there's so much corruption and there's so much distrust between the people and our like elected officials that I don't know what to do about that.
I saw this news clip on my feed that was someone like was reporting at the DNC and they were talking about how, or maybe they were at I don't know. I don't remember which convention it was. I don't remember if it was the Republican or the Democratic National Convention, but they were.
Is it called the Republican National Convention?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
The Conservative. No, it would be. I've never heard the RNC.
I think DNC and RNC.
Is that a thing?
I don't know.
Anyway, I don't know. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So they were reporting at it and they were talking about how one party claims that the other party is bought. And then they were saying, but like all the boxes here are like $30 million. And so everybody in these boxes is here, has funded everything going on that stage. Everyone on that stage is saying, we're going to stick it to the man and we're not going to buy into like, we're going to dismantle this like oligarchy, whatever.
Yeah.
While all of those people are sitting up in the box and they know for damn well that they're not going to do a damn thing about it because they're the ones that have funded their ability to be on that stage and appeal to the people.
But then they're just saying what they need to get votes. And that's where the distrust comes in, right? Like, and I think it's okay to not trust your like, I look at the way I like align with politics is how I feel about Taylor Swift. I fucking love Taylor Swift. I love her music. She's my whole frontal lobe is her, right? Okay. Lifelong. Heard.
Yeah. Retweet.
I would feel comfortable saying you are the same way.
Yes.
I refuse to call myself a Swiftie. That because there are only because there are Swifties that are gross and weird and problematic and like not at all a group I want to associate with. Also,
not a representation of like how I experience your music.
Not like I'm not a psychopath. Some of them are.
Yeah.
But like also, I think it's really important to be able to point out that Taylor Swift is a fucking human and she's flawed.
Yeah.
She is. Yeah. She makes weird fucking choices. She makes mistakes. She's not a perfect person. Or even take out that. Who the fuck am I to say whether or not someone is worthy of? I have no idea. But like she does things that don't align with me. At times. Yeah. She's done things before in the past where I'm like, and regardless, I love her so much. I celebrate her so much, but that doesn't mean that I am going to justify every single thing that she does.
Right.
And I feel like it can be the same way with like, however you vote, if you lean more one way than the other, like that's your business and just hold space to hold them accountable. These are human beings. These are typically middle-aged, if not ancient, white men, the group that needs to be held accountable more than any group of people in this fucking country. It's okay to vote a certain way, but be like, yo, I don't like any of this. And so like, I will.
Do you think if there was like, I'm curious if there was ever a time that you disagreed with like everything that they were campaigning on, would you still vote for that party?
Oh my God, no.
Okay.
But yeah, there are things that are big enough deal breakers for me.
Yeah. And that's okay. I think that's okay to for that, especially in the climate that we're in. Like, I think that is honestly, that's kind of the game that we're playing.
Have to. That's how you have
to
vote.
What are the big enough deal breakers for you? Like, what's going to swing you one way or the other? What are those deal breakers for you? Because I think that's really the only option we have right now.
Yeah.
As voters.
And that's why I think, again, it comes back down to like, well, what do you prioritize? Right. And I think that people have different priorities. And I think that that should be okay. Yeah. And where like, for me, I have a really hard time with conflict and I have a hard time with disagreeing and not thinking that it's going to like end a relationship if I disagree with someone. And so it's easier for me to not talk about it. But I really do feel blessed. And I think it's why it's important to, live in a city. There's more people. You're exposed to more culture, more people with background. It's a numbers game, babe. I think living in a city is so important because you are exposed to less of one same type of person thinking the same thing. Or like I've lived in a small town and it was, everyone thought the same. everyone voted the same. Everyone felt the same way. It's a small group of people. It's a lot easier to like surround yourself with like-minded people because that's what's more comfortable. And for me, it's so important that like surrounding yourself with people that believe differently is what is really going to make you as well-rounded and well-versed of a person as you can be. So like, you know, my grandparents, who I love so much. You know how much I love them. They're very conservative. Well, my grandma passed, but like very conservative woman. So conservative. Loved anyone Republican. Actually, I think she was blue for a long time and then swapped, if I remember right. But before my time.
And to me, I wonder too, if like some of those like changes when people like jump parties, I wonder if it's like the party changing more than maybe the person changing.
Yeah.
Because my understanding is that, and I don't have any like facts to back this up, but like my understanding is that like the parties have changed a lot throughout the decades, centuries, whatever.
That's what I've heard too. Yeah.
So I wonder like how much of it is like, people like are like, well, this isn't what I believe anymore, but also people change their minds. So, I mean, maybe it's both, but like,
I think it's both. I think,
I would just be curious.
I think that like certain
like to ask, I guess, individuals like, hey, did you switch parties because you changed your mind, or is it because the party changed?
I think that certain politicians run for like whatever role, whatever they're running for, and they influence the party. Right. And then that does shift the party inevitably because they are like the head of that. Like I'm thinking like a presidential candidate. There are so many different like take Democrats. Like, I don't know, fucking know, pick any party. And it's like, look at this Democratic president, look at this one. They are completely different types of Democrats. They're completely different people. And inevitably, because they're leading that party, the party is going to shift and change and like mold a little bit.
Yeah, you're totally right.
And I think that does happen over time.
Because I think I heard something that in like I think it was during the maybe 2004 or maybe 2008 elections, whatever it was. But at a certain point, one of the major Christian churches that had like a lot of money behind them, endorsed or, was one of the sponsors to the Bush campaign. And that's when we started to get so much more influx of like pushing for, where the right to life movement became a part of the conservative party.
I'll tell you right now, that was genius on the conservative end.
Well, no, I think it was genius on the religious side of things.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, it
appealed to.
Right. But the church got more involved with that party. Yes. And I think it was genius because it got that's what like started. I was talking to my mom about this and again, like, man, I hope I don't fuck this up. But one time recently, she was talking about how like one of the most genius things that ever happened was like the conservatives and like the church, like religious organizations kind of coming together.
Yeah. Because then you buy all of those people. You're buying them out
and you're buying all those people because then they are speaking to like Christian values and our country is primarily Christian. And so then you're getting like waves of hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, people that maybe wouldn't have considered your party.
Well, and religion is at the core of life for so many people.
It also deters a lot of people who like don't like like buy into that.
But I think that there are more
and don't want to be
religious people than not though. So I think, well, I mean, that's changing, but I do think that religion has always been such a core part of the human experience that I think that to have that on your side and associated with your party.
Well, and because there's so many different sects of Christianity, then you get a lot more buying into one side.
And if then say that people are torn, say there's people that like that. I know that there are people out there and no judgment that are like, I don't pay attention to politics. I don't care. I just want to live my life. I don't want to be involved. I don't know who to vote for, but they say they're Christian and they got the church on their side. So they got my vote.
Well, it's the same thing as like on the other side of people being like, well, I don't know anything about politics, but I care about a woman's right to choose. And I care about women's like bodily autonomy. So I don't know. So I'm just going to vote for this one side.
It's just crazy though.
But it's like, it's the same thing. Both sides have that thing where like, if like, and I think that's what we're kind of getting at is like, we're just like kind of having to just pick up what is like the most important to us individually. Completely. And then just like, well, I guess even though I don't like any of this other shit, this is the thing that
this is a deal breaker for me.
Threatened. Like I'll at least by voting for this candidate, this thing that is important to me is hopefully
right. So
not going to be stripped.
So if there's at least one thing,
that I get to
I'm
keep,
going to run with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, I do understand that, right? Because I'm not well versed, but there are like a handful of things that matter to me, and that is what sways my voting. And I think that should be okay. And I think that should be allowed. And I do think that when people are disagreeing, what is important, what I was saying earlier is like, I think it's okay to take in a little bit of context.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, bless his heart. My grandpa makes the craziest posts on Facebook. He reshares the silliest, most asinine things on the planet that are just so out of touch. And
but like Facebook reshares, I like rarely, I go on Facebook maybe 3 times a year, but some of the shit on there, some of the clickbait is
Facebook is all clickbait. Facebook is propaganda.
Facebook is wild, man.
Facebook, they got a hold
Facebook
of the boomers.
Politics they should never have been allowed on social media.
It's awful.
But it's no shade to them. But like, you can't come into it like in like your midlife crisis and all of a sudden have access to this type of platform. It goes just bad.
It goes so bad. Like there right now, like a lot of people on my Facebook are sharing, and they all align politically. They're all sharing the same post, and it's like warning, graphic content, and the picture's blurred out. And then it's a picture of like a bald eagle carrying an American flag. And then the caption is like, patriotism has become taboo or some shit like that. Share if you love America. And it's like,
that's a lot.
Jesus fucking Christ.
It's a little drama for me.
It's just like so over the top and silly. And regardless, like, you know, my grandpa, like even in the last few years, he would post stuff. Like one time my grandpa and I got into it, like commenting back and forth because it was like when George Floyd died and all that shit. And I was just like, Grandpa, you are being a fucking racist.
Yeah.
And I thought that like going toe to toe with like a 78-year-old man was really going to do a lot. At the end of the day, like I do think there's something to be said about like holding people accountable, but I actively choose to not be someone. I'm someone that probably needs to be educated, and I'm not going to sit here and get in a fight with an old person. Yeah. I like really can take in context that like my grandpa was born during World War II and grew up during like, you know, the 50s, the 60s. A lot of like political shit went down throughout his life and throughout everyone's life that like it shaped his views and his opinions. And he's an old person. Yeah. Like he has lived his life. And I think that sometimes when people get older, they get cynical, and like I understand that. And I think that sometimes when there's like a lot of disagreement, just sometimes stopping and being like, is it worth the engagement? Like, do you... I'm not going to ever agree with my grandpa. I know my morals, and I feel really fucking okay with like my beliefs, obviously. So like, it's just things get so hot and heated, and it's like, you have the power to not do this. You have the power to not debate and go back and forth. And there are times where I've been like, yo, people are saying shit that is pissing me the fuck off. But like, I just feel like we're not in a place where like we can engage and like debate politics anymore. Yeah. It's just not an option.
Well, yeah, I feel like until like there's some sort of like kind of like transformation or kind of disillusion of what things look like right now. It's like it's like the pendulum has swung so far to the hostile side. It's like we've got to come back, you know? And I think we are on the verge of that, but it's like there has to be some serious shifts happening before we get there. And I do think we're on the way. Like, I think us having these types of conversations, or like other people being able to like have these conversations where you're not necessarily like, you're able to like just sit here and like kind of be objective or observe, or just like talk about like things from like a factual place rather than like such like an emotionally
a charged
place. Yes. Because it's okay to have like your emotions involved. I think that's really important. And you take that out and it becomes sociopathic.
Well, like, and that's why you care about these policies.
Exactly.
Right?
Because there is emotion attached, but it's like the charge that is kind of that ruins the ability to connect and actually debate in a healthy way. And I think debate is healthy.
I do.
when it can be done in a respectful way. That's why we have political debates every election.
Right.
It's important to have. It's important to hear people go toe to toe and like actually discuss their different opinions on policies. And you can like weigh that against your experience, your beliefs, and decide for yourself who you align with.
Right.
And I look forward to the debates because then because I don't feel like that I align with a party. So for me to be able to watch a debate, I mean, except for in recent elections, because it really has amounted to nothing, to be able to sit and watch a debate is really exciting because I get to hear what these people have to say on different issues. And I'm like, oh, okay, I respect how you articulated this. I identify with your belief here, but like, you know, without debate, you don't get that opportunity.
It feels like you're not even like people aren't. Right now, where I wish that there could be a lot of change is I feel like people aren't even allowed to go on the journey of finding their political beliefs or to go on the journey of aligning with a party if that's what they want to do, because it's so hot button that it's like, if you don't have a decision, if you don't know and you don't say the right thing, then you're fucking done. You're written off as like ignorant or a bad person. And it's like, maybe at least let people figure it out.
Yeah. Or like if you... Like I've noticed a huge like trend on like just on different social platforms with like censorship messaging and like links to get like information. And I'm like, this just seems like very like kind of like pushing an agenda.
You mean like if someone's like, here is something where you can learn more about X and they're sending like a resource?
Yeah, or not necessarily an individual posting it, but the social media platform suggesting it on different videos.
Right, because every single one of them is aligned with a party and has an agenda.
Yes, exactly. And so I don't like that either. Right. Because now social media, which should be like a place for freedom of expression and freedom of speech, feels like it's like not a safe place. Like even, I don't know if you saw, but this week there was a post from, which I have mixed feelings on this human, but Mark Zuckerberg had released a statement about like his feelings about like Facebook censorship.
Right.
And
I don't remember what it said.
I think it was like I didn't read it, but like all the way through, but like the headline basically was like, Zuckerberg expresses regret over Facebook censorship, basically. That basically acknowledging that, yeah, we have actively censored like whatever the messages are. Like, and I don't know to what extent, like, and that's not what I'm here to argue, like what they're censoring, maybe as much as like, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like censorship really freaks me out. Like I've gotten notifications on or like messages or alerts or whatever on my, like when I go to post a story, like that, careful, this message, like, or like something about your content that you're sharing is like, has been reported by other users. Are you sure you want to share this?
Wow.
And I'm just like, because I said I'm horny.
Oh,
like, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, but it's just like, I don't like that. Like, why am I not allowed to say, like, why are we not allowed to say death on TikTok? Why am I not allowed to like,
this is getting interesting. I mean? Censorship is interesting.
I think it's really interesting. And we don't necessarily have to like dive into that rabbit hole, but like why? Because like, that's why Gen Z says unaliving. It's because you're not allowed to say death on or dying.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Like that to me, that's not good. Well, and don't get me wrong. Like I fucking love TikTok. Like, but
also if it seems like I'm like disagreeing with you, I'm literally processing everything you're saying and like forming a thought. So I'm listening to you and I'm very interested. I just don't
like,
want you to think I disagree.
No. Or like, why can't like a lot of things like that will get like taken down on different platforms. It's like, that's not fair. Cause then you're promoting like one specific thing. And then that's like, that's dangerous too.
Or like from my perspective, I feel, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about censorship and I'm still working through a lot of my opinions on it, but
it's a hard thing. Yeah.
But what I will say is that, I think that you're saying it's not fair. I see that perspective. I think for me, it's more like that is a slippery slope.
Exactly.
Because who the fuck is deciding what should be taken down and
what's not? Like who gets to make the call?
It just seems like you're setting yourself up to fail and you're giving
someone a lot of power. or a group of people a lot of power, whatever group. And I don't want this, because at the same time, like I think,
but I don't want the spread of misinformation either, because that shit's also blowing up our country.
Right. But I think it happens on both sides, and it doesn't, like, I think there truly is misinformation on both sides. And but what's hard is words like censorship or misinformation get attributed to one party or another. And so I don't want that to be like something that's like,
no, I know you got to be careful
associated with like my beliefs. But I think I can see why one party is like really pissed off about censorship and one party's really pissed off about misinformation. I think they're both huge issues, and they kind of come from the same fucking place.
Right.
And
it's coming from a politically charged place.
A politically charged place, and like a politically who gets to control who. Well, because gets to control the landscape.
I do think, okay, and I think this is where because I'm not well versed on this topic.
Yeah.
But as you're saying these things to me, my thought in my head right off the bat is, okay, I would love to one day, I hope we do an episode on social media, because I attribute so much of the world's good and bad to social media. I'm not anti-social media, but fuck, have we fucked it up. And I wonder though, or I guess my question, or where I'm like, ooh, this seems scary, is like, if we don't have people to check the world, we're just letting anyone say fucking anything on the internet they want. And then we're going to start getting into hate speech. We're going to start getting into like actual, like online, like bullying, attacking people. And like, that's dangerous.
And that's what's hard. Because I think we have those, I think we can take like notes from how we have those laws as we would engage with each other in person and apply those similar laws.
Right. But like, who's going to track that? Is my question.
Yeah, no, and I think that's where we're like running into like kind of growth boundaries here, or growth edges.
Is that the issue? I don't know the issue around. Is that like, I don't know. So like, I'm asking genuinely, is it who's for and against censorship? And is it like, we want people to not attack each other and blow each other up on the internet, especially about politics, to be honest with you. I feel like politics fuels a lot of that. Who is policing it? And like, are there laws in place? Like,
that's the thing. I don't think that there's laws in place for it, but there are like certain like political groups that are pushing for it and
for censorship.
And I think what is problematic is it just like perpetuates like only one side, where then like people don't get to like have the conversation. But I also don't think like a lot of our like society right now is able to just have the conversation in person or over socials. But like, I think it's much worse and much more hostile over socials.
Can I ask again, not educated, from what you've seen, what would you say is getting, like, what kind of topics are getting censored on the internet right now?
For me, what I see, because like where my interests are a lot like in like the health spaces. And a lot of that is becoming very political because of how much money is kind of involved in kind of preventing people from being healthy.
Right.
So a lot of things around health. So like, and this is not me saying I believe one way or the other, but like issues around COVID, issues around vaccines, issues around functional or alternative medicine, issues around like conventional, like Western medicine, and I think like environmental issues and processed foods and different like heart disease, diabetes, those kind of things. There's a definite like agenda, I think, from what I see, being pushed for conventional medicine. You don't need to change your diet. Just keep eating processed foods, keep eating these like, you know, highly processed foods. And all you need is this drug to fix the problem that these foods cause. And don't question anything else kind of along the way. And this is the one way that we should respond to COVID. And this is the only way. And it just doesn't leave room for conversation or for like any alternative medicine.
I got you.
Or approaches.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
And what would be, so I'm assuming then that.
And that's like from coming from someone who works in healthcare too.
Right. So are you, who has the agenda there? Is it the pharmaceutical companies? Is that what you think?
So from my understanding is that like the pharmaceutical companies and the like major food industry companies are kind of, they own each other. So they have major stakes in each other's stocks and business and all that stuff. And there's a really good episode actually with this guy, I can't remember his name, of a podcast where they kind of break down some of it, and but just it's more like health focused. But anyway, they talk about a lot of the problems of what's going on. But I just like, I feel like hold on, you asked me something specific, so I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent.
Was the is the people with the agenda, is it the, do you think it's the
then because of their kind of hold in the political system, they can kind of puppet up the political party because they have so much money.
I see.
They can puppet the political party to encourage the platforms to censor this information or say anything that's not this is misinformation.
I see. Yeah, now I'm kind of like, sorry, my brain is kind of spiraling around like, I guess wanting to know, like, I don't know what part, this is how uneducated I am. What party, then like, I don't want to get into it on the episode, obviously, because I don't want to, I don't know, have people put us in a box, but what party aligns with what? Because my thing is like, I don't think that people should be censored, but I do think that the spread of misinformation and people being allowed to say whatever the fuck they want, especially only because people like I feel like social media, not to go back to journalism, but like I do really, journalism's fucking crazy and cool, but like I do feel like somehow along the way we have replaced real, like actual, the art of journalism with social media, and people now consume things found online via Facebook, Twitter, what the fuck ever. Those are their news articles now. And
same, honestly.
That's
like,
I mean,
you know, not necessarily Facebook, but like other platforms is where I get a lot of my news. Like I do some consumption of like other places. Right. Like I get notification. Like I guess the only place I really like get my news updates from is BBC, which I don't know. It just feels like a neutral one for me. So I like BBC, but that's it.
Well, and don't get me wrong, like, but BBC is a news outlet. I think
exactly.
But so like, it's fine to like be on your phone and like be on social media and like, I guess get it that way. I'm talking like the people that I know or the things I see where it's like, it's people just commenting. Some guy on some fucking Reddit forum or who's like saying all this shit, and because it aligns with people's views, they fucking run with it.
It appeals to their,
and then it's factual. So then I do think that sometimes it's kind of important. I don't know who it would be. I don't trust it. Anything about the world anymore, but like there needs to be some policing,
because then some. Yes, but I also feel like I do agree with you, because then you don't want like something that is like completely asinine to be perpetuated, and because what happens with social media is like one idea can be spread so fast and so quickly.
I have an example of that.
Yeah. And so I totally get what you're saying, that there should be policing there, because you don't want something that could be really, I'm thinking of something else too, that could be like very dangerous and disruptive. I mean, if you think about the January 6th event, like that was like organized and
awful
via social media. And then you also think about some of these like other terrorist groups that become radicalized via social media. Like I see where that is dangerous. And I think that there is some policing. I think that like our government agencies do monitor that, because I mean, if you look at Taylor Swift's concert in Vienna that got shut down because it was being monitored.
Yeah.
But it was being monitored.
No, and that's sick.
Because they were radicalizing via social media. But what I find to be problematic is when that becomes too far, and like, because people are like, don't spread misinformation. If a group with a lot of power is saying, or they get a doctor to say, oh, that's misinformation, don't spread that. But the studies they're referencing were bought by the pharmaceutical companies and the big food industry companies, and they're skewing the data, and they're not good studies by any metrics. They don't have a good control group. They don't have like all these like fundamental, like basic structures to their studies, yet they're like referencing them, or they're funding them and skewing the results to like basically kind of endorse their angle on things. Like they're in the wheat industry. Of course, they're going to put wheat at the bottom of the food pyramid and say you need 6 to 8 servings of grains a day.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. It's a self-perpetuating thing. And then when they have enough like money and power, then they're saying like, oh, to say that that grains are bad for you or that seed oils are bad for you, that's misinformation. Don't spread misinformation. And then that is like, people hear that and are like, and they instantly are like, they take kind of this, what is misinformation to be the truth, and are afraid of other things. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. And I think, would you say,
which is dangerous to me?
It's like it is. I do think, here's what I will say is I do think that sometimes people use that, like,
they use it to appeal to like fear monger.
Well, I think there's a lot of fear mongering on both sides. I think that because I will say that on one of the like people that typically swing to one party more than the other, it's like, it's that whole like, don't be a sheep. Don't trust anything. Like, I think it's really good to not trust anyone that works in politics. And I think it's really okay to question everything. Yeah. You're allowed to question everything.
And you should.
But it is,
I think it's responsible to question everything.
But the radical side of this that I'm saying, it's the radicals of like, I'm sorry, it's fear mongering. You're trying to make people scared of the whole system, when I think that it's just that there are so many parts of it that need to be corrected. But like, there are times where like I get fed that and I'm like, you're trying to skip, like, I just don't buy into it. Like I do
like,
sometimes.
What do you mean?
Like
with what? I guess I just want to make sure I understand.
Like with like the spreading of misinformation, like, or no. Like, they're trying to censor you. They're trying to take away your voice. Like for me, I do think that can be scary. And I do think that like censorship can be a slippery slope. I'm not one to typically, like, it's hard for me because like when I think about like take something really simple. I'm a nanny, right? And I get asked this all the time. Like I have these conversations all the time with like fellow nannies or just like parents, whatever. Like your kids and what they can and can't watch in terms of like, I love horror movies. Yeah. I grew up watching horror movies my whole fucking life. And I kind of, or like we've talked about with nudity, like if I'm going to have a kid, hopefully I would be lucky and privileged enough to breastfeed my kid. My kid is going to see my tits at some point. Yeah. My kid is going to see tits. My kid is going to see anatomy. So to me, like, I'm not going to like watch porn with my kid. That's a whole different thing. But like, if there's a movie or a show on and like there's a naked person,
I'm not going to make it weird. That's a normal part of life. I think that's like an important part for kids to be exposed to so that it doesn't become a fetishized thing later.
And like, listen, there's obviously like a spectrum to everything, right? I'm not going to let my fucking kid watch Saw when they're 5 years old.
Yeah. I think that's a healthy boundary.
That's a boundary. Yeah. But
I think that's an appropriate use of censoring.
But let me tell you right now, I'm not going to, if my kid wants to watch a movie where there is a death, where there is a car accident, where there is something that maybe it will make them scared for a minute, you know what? It's a fucking part of life and we'll get through it together and I'll support them, but at least they're getting exposed. Yeah. I don't understand the parents that are like, don't watch SpongeBob, don't watch The Simpsons, don't watch Family Guy because like, why are like, and it's always like blanketed with like, well, it's not appropriate. And it's like, well, you know what? Especially in this day and age of the internet, my kid is gonna see people naked pretty early in life. Yeah. They're gonna see fucking death, violence, all of these things. I would rather expose them to it.
You don't know what their friends are being exposed to, what their friends' older siblings are exposing them to. They're like, there's so much unknown. And I think in order to like set your kid up for success, you have to like expose them to things in a healthy way. So anyway, back to like like when you get onto social media, I think I don't know, that's where it's tricky. Like, I don't know what is like appropriate or not.
So I have a full circle moment here. I think that I am not like, I don't like censorship. I'm not pro censorship, but I do think that, like everything, there is a balance and a scale.
There
and
needs
I think
to be regulations and guidelines to it. So you can't bully people.
You can't tell someone to kill themselves.
Yeah,
like,
no,
fuck
those
you.
are things that you cannot do. You can't inflict harm on other people.
And
period.
But the thing is when you're talking about politicized things, that's in this climate.
Yeah,
that's where it always ends up.
And it's so tricky. Like
it's
the fact that there's certain language that's like okay or not okay. Like the fact that I can't say death. Which we're all gonna fucking die.
We're dying right now.
Yes, we're all gonna die. The fact that I can't say that word on social media because that video is gonna be taken down. For what? Are we trying to pretend like we're not gonna die?
It's because crazy. Of the fucking idiots who have actually like caused people to die. And that's the thing is like, I think I do understand that. I think that, you know, I don't think it's right that we can't say death on the internet. That's crazy to me. I didn't know that was a thing. But I think that...
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. I can't think of anything, but that one's the most ridiculous one to me.
I agree. I think that though,
like I get like some of like the cussing or like and even to some extent I can understand where the sexual stuff is like censored. Not that I necessarily agree.
Yeah,
because also sex is a part of life. How do you think any of us got here? I don't know. Just a question.
With sex, I'm like, yo, we should be talking more about it. But
exactly. But I can understand because of like the way, like how puritanical our culture's roots are. Like I get that.
Totally. Yeah.
I get where it comes from, but that doesn't mean I agree with it. But like death, I don't get that at all.
Right. And I think that this has always been like, as with social media, this is an issue where like, there's a spread of misinformation or we're like over censoring maybe. But like my thing with the spread of misinformation is like, I think back in the day, if there was something like an article that came out or a study that came out before the change in journalism, we could rely on the news to kind of like affirm or like be a reliable source of information. And the problem is that it's become sensationalized. Yeah, and I'm not anti-media. I think that's a slippery slope too. No, but I think media is really important, but I think we're getting away from what it used to be. Yes. Correct. And you and I definitely can agree on that. But I think that what's hard now is that we don't really have it feels like, and I could be wrong, it's just so much harder to have access to neutral scientific research, like evidence-based, just what is reports. Going on. I just want like a objective report. I don't want anything infused to it because I'm going to infuse my own shit into it. Exactly. So let me do the work. That's what I want. Don't be doing it for me. Just give me the facts because I promise you I'm going to form an opinion. I can guarantee you that. Sister. Promise. I promise you that I just need the numbers. I just need the stats. And like, you know, it really is a problem with our country and how everyone is fueled by money. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but that's kind of like what we're talking about right now. We may have like slightly different viewpoints, but at the end of the day, like, but we still like, I think we agree on so many things, but I think like also like to get back to like the whole, like, there's different priorities that we each have because of how we live our lives, because of like, we're individual people and because of our goals. Exactly. Like I have different goals than you do and vice versa. And then we also have a lot of shared goals. And then we have also like you have goals that I don't have and vice versa. So I think the fact that we can acknowledge all of those things to be true and still sit here. And like, I have like mad respect for you because I totally respect what your goals are. Mm-hmm. Same. Like and it would be so boring if we had the exact same views and the exact same interests and the exact same hobbies and had the same opinion on everything. How fucking boring. I think we have gotten to a place where we're so uncomfortable, maybe just to kind of like wrap things up. We've gotten so uncomfortable with conflict as a society that we kind of by proxy just surround ourselves with an echo chamber of people who reinforce all our same things. How boring is that? You're never going to grow. You're never going to be pushed to think or articulate something that maybe you hadn't considered had someone else not presented it to you. Right. You know, like you need someone to like present or show you a situation that you like maybe would never have considered, because you didn't know them or know that kind of circumstance or whatever. Well, that ties back to what I was saying about like, that's why like it's nothing against like living in like a small town or like a country community, but like I'm agreeing with you that like the more people you are exposed to, the more well-rounded of a person you are. If you surround yourself with only people that agree with you and are like-minded, it's not only going to get boring, but you're never going to be challenged to see it from another perspective.
Well, and I 100% agree with you, and I'll take it one step further. I think people who live in cities would stand to benefit a lot from going to like a small town as well. I think there's a lot of values or things, ways of life that they're never exposed to in an urban setting that I think are very important. I don't think that people who live in an urban setting connect with the earth in the same way that someone who lives on acreage does or lives in the mountains, like, or lives a more just a different lifestyle. I think it's both. I think we almost need like city swap or something. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And everyone has a different preference. I
see what you're saying about like living in a small town, only like being surrounded by like the same echo chamber of things, like you're not going to like be exposed to as much. And I agree with what you're saying there. But I also think someone who's only lived in a city, even though you're around all these different kinds of people and it generally is more cultured. You still have never been exposed to this other way of life and these other people who I think both sides kind of demonize each other a bit.
Yeah. Well, I think that like there is a cliche of like
small town America being.
Yeah. Well, I'm only talking listen, I think that there's a lot to be said about living in a small town. That's like a totally different, just because I'm a city person doesn't mean it's better at all.
Yeah.
I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
I am not at like everyone should live in the, I come from a family that is very country.
Well, and it's funny because you grew up you kind of grew up in the country.
Going to the country.
Like, definitely prefer the
I lived in a small town.
And I'm quite the opposite. Like I grew up very urban
in a city.
And I feel like very drawn to like living outside of the city.
Correct.
Like, so there's kind of, it's interesting.
So,
that way.
And so like, listen, I don't even care. Like that is dope. And I think that most people in my life actually prefer my mom wants to live on acreage. Kathleen wants to raise kids in a small town.
Yeah.
I would say all the people in my life are that way.
Yeah.
It's not even about that for me. It's just like when you look at the numbers of it, like when you live in a small town, everyone for the most part is of the same, if not similar socioeconomic status.
Yes.
And therefore everyone is just kind of going to have the same politics.
Yes and no. I think generally speaking, yes. But then I think you get like the rich farm people and the poor people who live in the small town.
Yeah. But
because I've seen that a lot where it's like you have the families that have like a lot of money and like a lot of generational wealth and they own like a lot of land and like are very wealthy, deep pockets.
Yeah.
But they kind of are intermixed with people who like are still like their families are renting and like they've never like had any kind of like, I've seen, I guess, it's like a micro economy that happens in a small town as well.
Totally. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Like again, I'm speaking in generalizations here just to say, I do think only when it comes to politics, the more people you expose yourself to, the better.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all. And like, it's not even city it's not city versus country. It's just like, don't surround yourself with people that only align with your views. I think there's obviously.
Yeah. So I think exactly what we're saying. Like if you've only kind of been exposed to one thing, go seek out the other and expose yourself to it. Ask questions, be curious. I think the second you are curious about something, like, it just opens your brain up for like learning and a new perspective and like any sort of maybe like a mindset shift that you weren't like expecting.
And the minute you build a wall though and say, fuck you, we can't be aligned is when people start to hate people for how they were born, who they want to love. Like those basic human, like when you're trying to keep people on the bottom is when you're going to lose me. Like I don't tolerate that. But like, I don't understand a lot about like wanting to live the small town life. And I don't understand the politics or the economics behind that. But like, that's where a lot of the people I love so much that are more conservative, that is their background. And so I think it is important to educate yourself in all aspects of like city, country, different poverty lines, like all of those things. So that you can at least be more empathetic. You don't have to agree, but everyone can have a little bit of empathy.
Yeah.
Again, as long as you're not attacking like a group of people for existing, that's kind of weird. But I don't know. It's a super uncomfortable thing I don't like talking about it. It's hard for me to talk about.
Yeah.
The whole time, this whole episode, like now that we've wrapped up, like it's just been me being like, oh fuck, I don't want them to think that I'm either way, because
it's just
that's
like,
scary.
It's just wild because I just exactly. I feel like there's so much. And the thing is, like, I feel secure in myself.
Yeah.
And I feel like confident in the things I believe in. But I also think I am pretty open-minded and am open to like hearing sides of a thing, like all sides of a thing. So if people want to infuse their judgments or prejudice onto anything that I've said that maybe is like leaning one way or another, or like attacking one person or another, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because and I think I could say the same for you. Like, I'm open to a conversation about it. I'm open to hearing like other points of view, but like so far with the information that I have, these are the like opinions that I've formed up to this point.
Right.
You know, and I think I feel very confident to be able to say that.
Yeah.
And to me, like if you're someone who is so like married to a party, and anything that I've said maybe has like turned you off because it sounds like propaganda from another party, that's something I think for you to like do some self-reflection. Yeah. Like, I think that's all that is.
Well, I mean, and I think it's like you are just continuing to perpetuate division.
Yes.
Like we don't have to agree. And, you know, even if it's something where someone like, I think the last thing I will say is that for me, if you are someone, and this is just my tactic, where you are saying something that like morally we will like, if you're like, no abortions, like I'll say that that's where I stand. I don't care. Or like women don't have a right to choose. Like you and I are not going to be able to ever agree on anything, because that's such a basic human right to me that like, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to like yell, scream, get in your face, say fuck you, write you. I'm going to quietly do what I need to do to keep myself at bay. If it's like, like, I just don't understand people needing to make a big scene about it. If at the end of the day, you really feel like you can't see past it or see this person as more than like this one opinion they said, that's a hard way to live, to be honest with you. Cause I feel like you're denying, like you. So
are you saying like you would still be like, even if someone was like, no, I'm like vehemently like against abortion, would you be able to connect with them in any other way? Because I feel like okay, listen, that one's hard for me only because I am not a part of any minority groups except for one. That I can think of off the top of my head, and it's being a woman. Right. So that particular topic for me is pretty hard, because how do I respect someone who doesn't want me to have bodily autonomy? That's crazy. To me, like it is like that's just as a respect thing. Like, so you're seeing me as someone who is not able to make my own choice with my body. Right. That one is the only one for me that I think is the hardest, where I'm like, if I had like a male say that to me, they're saying I deserve more autonomy than you. How do I be friends with them? I could have a pleasant conversation with them. I could mask and be polite. I'm not going to make a scene. But if you're asking me, could I truly be friends with someone who outwardly was against a woman's right to choose? How? Yeah, but I think what's really hard too is like people on the other side feel the same way, like, but the inverse. And I think that's like kind of contributes to the division. So it's like,
but that comes from a religious place, right? Like people that are against.
Yeah, but even regardless, because to me, like if I had a belief that was like, I don't know, and I'm not a religious person, but like, I think it's dangerous to like kind of disregard or dismiss someone's like political view because it's rooted in like their religious view. I don't think that I don't believe that church and state should be like
they should not be together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I believe in that separation.
I also do. Yes.
But I am for abortion. I believe that is a basic right. And I see a lot of situations where like, because in the medical place, like if there's a complicated birth or there's like a lot of like medically like things happening where the life of the mother or the life of the baby is at risk, we always prioritize the life of the mother, not the life of the baby.
Yeah.
So when it comes to abortion, there's a lot of issues where like having, like carrying that child, and this is known, this is not new information, this is not profound, but carrying that child puts the mother's life at risk. So in the setting of giving birth, we choose the mother. So why would we wait to get to that point or put the mother's life at risk up until that point? Right. And that's not the only issue or there's only circumstance but that's just one that I can think of.
One example. Yeah.
With like, you know, direct experience that I've had. But I think where it gets tricky is like for someone who like believes, you know, like where I think like I would respect someone who is like against abortion is if they say, I'm against it, but I still think you have the right to make the choice for yourself. Like I wouldn't choose it for me, but like I respect your ability to choose. That's where,
because that's a choice.
Yes,
you're choosing to not. If you were to be in a situation where you needed to, you're choosing to not. That is what right to choose is.
Exactly. But I think when people take it one step further and they think, well, I'm against it, so everyone should be.
That's
where it's like, it's a problem.
No. And you and I, I guess I should have been more specific because you're absolutely right. Like if you're against it for you, do you, dude? Yeah. Have all the fucking kids you want. That's great. But like, it's people that are like, if a woman gets pregnant, have the kid. You can't make a choice. That to me is like fundamentally, I am okay not being friends with that person because that is like a moral issue where like, it doesn't mean that I can't be respectful again. I will always be respectful to everyone because I try to just, I don't think that getting in a bitch fight or, you know, going back and forth is going to do anything. But like, I do have certain points where it's like, I can respectfully be like, no, thank you. I mean, I think that that's dope. I think that's okay. We don't have to be fucking friends. We can disagree. And I can make a choice of like, if you're telling me that like, you think that you have the power to decide what goes on all up in this shit, then like, what are we doing? And that's okay. I think that people also like, not being, you know, that's a whole other issue in itself. But I think that we do ultimately need to get more comfortable with the idea of like, we're going to disagree, you guys. We're going to disagree. We're not going to like, and we have to be able to talk about what scares me is if we don't talk about politics more, it's going to never change.
Exactly. And that's the whole problem with keeping politics to be taboo. It's like you need to be involved politically, but you can't talk about it. So figure it out.
On your own.
Alone.
When you have no free time and you're just trying to survive. Yeah. So sick, brother.
Make a good decision because if it's not the right one, I hate you.
Yeah. I hate you. I don't think I want to be friends anymore. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you in a different light.
Yeah.
I'm judging you.
This is crazy.
I just don't even. Well, guys, you're seeing history.
This is the end.
This is the end. We're falling in line with every person in America right now.
No, we're totally fucking with you.
Just kidding. Let's not talk about politics anymore.
No, I think this was healthy.
It was healthy.
This is exhausting though.
I'm just like, man,
because it's like, I feel like I'm in like a game of like laser tag.
I
like,
feel like,
don't step there.
I feel like I just showed the internet my whole vagina and like I'm exposed.
Oh, I thought you meant, no, I definitely feel that way. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like, I feel like I just came out.
Straight at my girl parts. I was like figuratively.
I was like, you're in jeans and a bodysuit. You're like double protected.
That's not happening today. Some other time.
But no, metaphorically.
Yeah, for sure.
I hear you.
Yeah.
The kitty's out.
Okay, enough of that. I'm done. When we started talking about kitties, that's when I tap out.
Yeah.
Heard. Oh shit, I turned on the light. Oh no.
Okay.
Oh god, that was
guys,
scary.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, that was
Hopefully
scary.
you don't think we're extremists.
I am, it's fine.
Oh, look at your mic. It's pretty red, Kelly. Okay, one last thing before you go. There is no us without you. Go like and subscribe our show on your favorite streaming service and go follow us on all socials at Let's Get Taboo. Chat with you next time.